Amsterdam Airport Schiphol handled 71.7 million passengers in 2019. In 2024, it handled 66.8 million, still below its own pre-pandemic numbers 5 years later. That's not a recovery problem. Every other major European hub recovered fully. Paris CDG surpassed 2019. Frankfurt recovered. Istanbul grew past 90 million. London Heathrow is back above 83 million. Schiphol is the only major European hub still operating below its pre-pandemic peak, not because demand fell, but because the Dutch government spent 3 years legally trying to force the airport to shrink. They proposed cutting annual flights from 500,000 to 440,000. KLM, controlling 55% of every flight at Schiphol, joined Delta, easyJet, IATA, and TUI to fight it in court. Multiple governments collapsed mid-process. 4 court rulings contradicted each other. On March 11, 2026, the Dutch Supreme Court overturned the most recent flight cap entirely, ruling it legally unsound. The only major hub in the world that spent 3 years fighting its own government over whether it was allowed to keep operating at capacity, while Frankfurt, Paris, Istanbul, and Dubai expanded aggressively around it. Schiphol operates on a single terminal concept: 1 building, 3 departure halls, 6 runways, 9 kilometers southwest of Amsterdam. There is no secondary international airport in the Netherlands, no rival hub capable of absorbing overflow. Amsterdam is Schiphol, and Schiphol is Amsterdam. In 2024, the airport connected the Netherlands to 301 direct destinations, 124 of them intercontinental. For a trading nation of 18 million people, that reach is not a luxury. Rotterdam is Europe's largest port. Dutch multinationals, Shell, ASML, Philips, ING, maintain global operations requiring reliable intercontinental connectivity. When a Dutch executive needs to reach Singapore, Nairobi, or Sao Paulo, there is one airport. KLM controls 55% of all flight activity at Schiphol, over 255,000 flights in 2024. Add Transavia, operating under KLM's parent company, Air France-KLM, and the combined group accounts for closer to 65% of total movements. easyJet is the second largest carrier at roughly 36,000 flights annually. The gap between KLM and every other carrier is not a competitive dynamic. It is structural dominance that determines who holds leverage in any policy dispute involving the airport.
The flight cap proposal came from a problem that is legitimate and politically impossible to ignore in one of Europe's most densely populated countries, the urban region containing Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague, and Utrecht, with approximately 8 million residents. The airport's runways point directly toward residential municipalities. The noise footprint of 500,000 annual flights across 6 runways, including early morning and late night operations, affects a resident population with legal standing under Dutch and EU environmental law to demand relief. The government's January 2023 proposal was to reduce flights from 500,000 to 460,000 for the 2023-2024 season, falling further to 440,000 thereafter. The stated goal was a 15% reduction in residents experiencing serious noise disturbance. The infrastructure minister said directly, "The decision we announced means we are taking a step that has not been taken anywhere else in the world." That was accurate. No other government managing a major international hub had moved to reduce its own airport's capacity by legislative decree while demand was actively recovering. KLM called the cut incomprehensible and presented an alternative: 44 individual measures, including banning the noisiest aircraft, eliminating all flights between midnight and 5 a.m., banning private jets, and accelerating fleet renewal with quieter A320neo aircraft. The airline's argument was that noise reduction targets could be achieved without touching the total flight count. IATA challenged the cap separately on procedural grounds, arguing the Dutch government had not followed the EU's required balanced approach process, under which all noise reduction alternatives must be evaluated before any slot restriction is imposed. Both arguments went to court, and then the legal process became a chaos of its own. In April 2023, the Noord-Holland court ruled the government had not followed correct EU procedure. The 2023-2024 capacity cut was struck down. KLM won that round. In July 2023, a Dutch appeals court reversed that decision. The flight reduction could proceed temporarily while the longer balanced approach process was completed. The state had won back the authority to cut capacity. The government then proposed a revised cap of 452,500 flights for 2024, reduced night flights from 32,000 to 28,700 annually, and imposed requirements for quieter aircraft during nighttime hours. In November 2023, facing a pending Supreme Court ruling, the government shelved the immediate 2024 cuts to avoid imposing restrictions that might be overturned after airlines had already restructured their schedules around them. Schiphol's own CEO responded by noting the decision created more uncertainty, including for the aviation sector itself. Environmental groups called it a shocking retreat. The Dutch government then collapsed. A new coalition was formed. By late 2024, the government had settled on a revised cap of 478,000 flights per year, still below the 500,000 ceiling, but well above the original 440,000 target. Legal challenges from both sides continued. Airlines argued the cap was too restrictive. Residents and environmental organizations argued it was insufficient. On March 11, 2026, the Dutch Supreme Court struck down the 478,000 cap entirely. The court ruled the government had not adequately explained how a simple flight count would produce the intended noise reduction, had ignored meaningful differences between aircraft types in actual noise output, and had failed to properly justify the policy under the required legal framework. The night flight reduction, which no party had formally challenged, remained intact. 3 years of proceedings, 2 government collapses, 4 contradictory court decisions. The core capacity restriction was struck down.
Airlines planning long-haul networks work on 2 to 3 year lead timelines. Wide-body aircraft are ordered years in advance. Crew bases are built around stable slot allocations. During the period when Schiphol's capacity ceiling was genuinely uncertain, every carrier making network decisions had a structural incentive to direct growth elsewhere. Air France KLM management publicly acknowledged that future growth could be absorbed at Paris CDG rather than Amsterdam if the Dutch regulatory environment remained unpredictable. Frankfurt, operating under a clearer long-term legal framework, attracted route commitments that might otherwise have gone to Schiphol. This came on top of the 2022 operational collapse, which predated the capacity fight but set the political context for it. Security queues ran to 5 hours at peak periods. Thousands of passengers missed flights. Airlines were asked to voluntarily reduce summer schedules. The Schiphol Group CEO resigned. That crisis was operational rather than regulatory, but it created the political environment in which cutting the airport's capacity became a serious government proposal. Schiphol responded to both the operational and regulatory pressure by announcing the largest investment program in its history, a €6 billion infrastructure plan for 2024 through 2029. The program covers renovation of Pier C, a full overhaul of the baggage handling system, additional aircraft stands and taxiways, and a new Pier A scheduled to open in 2027. In 2024, the airport invested over €1 billion in a single year, a record, resulting in a cash flow after investments that was negative by €405 million. The airport is simultaneously building at record levels and operating below its own 2019 passenger numbers. KLM is proceeding with fleet renewal that addresses the underlying noise problem more directly than any flight count restriction. The airline ordered 100 Airbus A320neo and A321neo aircraft to replace its older Boeing 737 fleet. The A320neo family produces approximately 50% less noise than the aircraft it replaces. The 44-measure alternative plan KLM presented throughout the legal process, quieter aircraft, eliminated night flights, private jet ban, represents a substantively different approach to the same noise reduction goal. The Schiphol capacity dispute is a collision between two legitimate interests that a small, densely populated country cannot easily separate.
Residents living under the flight paths of a 6-runway airport have statutory rights under Dutch and EU law. Those rights are real, the harm is measurable, and the legal system has recognized their standing throughout this process. The Dutch economy's dependence on Schiphol's connectivity is equally real. The airport connects 18 million people to 301 destinations. It sits at the center of a trading economy whose reach depends on direct intercontinental access. Frankfurt, Paris, and Istanbul are not neutral alternatives. They are competitors, actively seeking the route commitments that regulatory uncertainty in Amsterdam makes available. What 3 years of court proceedings demonstrated is that a blunt instrument like a flight count cap, without accounting for the noise characteristics of individual aircraft, does not meet the legal standards required to impose it in Europe. The Supreme Court's ruling did not resolve the underlying tension, it struck down the mechanism. The government has stated it will develop new regulations. Residents remain entitled to relief. The balanced approach procedure continues. What Schiphol cannot recover is the period in which every airline making long-range network decisions had structural reasons to treat Amsterdam as less predictable than its competitors. Whether that diversion becomes permanent depends on how quickly the Dutch government builds a legally durable framework, and whether it does so before Frankfurt and Paris widen the gap further.